guess we.
Cool.
All right, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Alrighty. And then I'll just record an intro and introduce you once I figure that out. So happy to be here with Randal Clark, the music. What's your official title here at Corner Canyon?
I'm the director of instrumental music at Corner Canyon High School.
That's awesome. How long have you been at Corner Canyon?
I've been at Corner Canyon since we opened, and I'm guessing, what has that been, 7, 8 years?
Yeah.
And this is my 25th year teaching.
Really?
Yeah.
Where else have you taught?
I taught at Jordan High School for about 14 years, and then I taught 2 years at Joel P. Jensen Middle School.
What is it about teaching that kind of draws you in and keeps you going?
I don't know. But, it's fun to, start something with kids, especially this age group I particularly like, and watch them, grow it into something that you wouldn't expect could have been possible when it started. That's kind of fun for me.
Did you play? I saw that I read up a little bit on you. I know, first off, Randall and I go back a little bit. We used to be in the same neighborhood many moons ago in Harriman, and or is that supposed to be off the record?
No.
Okay, we'll edit that part out.
No.
So Randall and I know each other for going back a few years, and I read up on you, though, and saw that you started playing saxophone at age 9. Is that correct?
Yeah, so elementary school band was really big when I was really young. And there aren't as many elementary school programs like there used to be. It used to just be a thing. In fact, they had elementary school band teachers that would go around to every elementary school during the school day. So you'd get out of your normal elementary school class for an hour to go do elementary school band, and that started in the 4th grade. And I believe if you were a string player, you could do it as early as 3rd grade. So, but that was cool. So instead of having to do it before or after school, all the other kids were doing nutrition or extra work on something else, and we were all going to band, for an hour with the elementary school band teachers. So.
And then you picked saxophone.
I picked saxophone. I think my dad would have preferred something different, but my mom liked saxophone. She grew up listening to like Dave Brubeck and music of that kind, and so there were some records laying around of saxophonists, and I remember listening to Paul Desmond early on, and really thought that was I liked the sound of that. I really liked it a lot, and so that's where I went.
Yeah, I remember when I was in the 4th grade, did the same thing with elementary. They let you out, and I picked the drums because the drummers are the coolest. Saxophone players are pretty cool too, but then they're like, okay, you hold the drumsticks like this. I'm like, no, that's not how you. It just seemed so weird. I ended up playing the cello, so
yeah,
which I love. Yeah, it was a great choice. So you start playing with your elementary, and then how did your music career progress from there?
When I got to junior high, junior high band was a pretty big deal back then too, like especially in the area that I grew up in. And so you kind of had to get lessons if you wanted to compete with the other, with the peers that you had. Everybody was taking lessons. Everybody was getting really good. And so I realized that real quick after my 7th grade year. So I got some saxophone lessons, and I had a really great teacher that taught me how to do jazz improvisation. I was doing this in the 8th grade. And ever since then, it was just, one opportunity after another. And that's kind of how it is, when you start doing something, whatever that is, taking lessons or putting in extra practice time or whatever, you start being capable of more. And when you are capable of more opportunities start coming your way. So by 10th grade, I was playing in the All-State Jazz Band. I did that all 3 years of high school. I had a full ride scholarship to college on saxophone. It was just something that spoke to me, and I, because of that, I spent a lot of time working on it. So
saxophone. It seems like that's one of those. You talked about improv. It seems like one of the instruments where you really thrive on improv. Is that correct, or is that a good analysis?
Well, part of it is kind of hearing in your head what you want, and that's partly from listening so much to other saxophone players, and not just saxophone, but other jazz musicians that do that. You start hearing certain things over and over, and you learn what that's supposed to sound like, and then you figure out how to play it. And that's really what jazz improv is. You're actually not just pulling stuff out of the air magically. It's sort of like speaking a different language. And when you're in another country and you don't know the language, over time you start hearing certain phrases and inflections and things like that are common for wherever you are. And the more you hear those, the more they kind of just get into your into your head, and you're able to start producing those. And then on top of that, of course, there's the practicing scales and arpeggios and all that stuff too, but that just makes you more fluent. But really that's what it is just listening so much to other players that you want to sound like, and the improv just kind of comes from that point.
Yeah. So you said you got a full ride scholarship to for music, and at what point did you? Which school, and was it then that you decided I want to make this my career?
Yeah. So my junior high band director was one of these really impressive people, and also a very good band director. And I remember liking him so much. Even in 8th grade, I was thinking like, man, maybe I'd like to teach band one day. I wasn't thinking about having a professional career as a saxophone player. I just wanted to teach band and be like my junior high band director. And then I had a really great high school experience too, and my band director in high school was really cool. And so when I got to college, that was just the natural thing to do, was to do music education, and so I did. And 2 years into it, I became sure that I was doing the wrong thing.
Oh no!
Because people always hear the stories like, well, if you're in music, you're not going to be able to make a lot of money, and if music education, well, there's only so many band jobs around, so you start hearing all these things that kind of discourage you from wanting to do it. So I think, well, maybe I'll go into computer programming instead. But after spending 2 years, I decided that it isn't worth stopping and switching. I'll just stay and do this and finish it, and then if I don't like it, I'll do something else later. At least I'll have the degree. So yeah, so I went into music ed and got my first job at Joel P. Jensen Middle School. And after that first year of teaching, I was sure I didn't want to teach band. It was really challenging, teaching middle school students that first year for me. Some people probably take right to it, but I struggled a little bit. And went actually that summer looking for other jobs, but I really couldn't find anything that was going to work for me job-wise. And I'm like, well, I'll give it another year and see how it goes. And the second year I taught middle school was probably the best year that I've had teaching, one of the best that I've had teaching. I loved it. It went from literally the worst year ever to the best year. And at that point it was like, yeah, I think this is for me. And it's just been that way ever since.
What caused the transition or the change?
I don't know.
It clicked.
Maybe I just got better at the job. I got better at dealing with the younger kids.
Maybe the kids just got better.
Maybe, I don't know. So.
Well, that's great. So it clicks, and you start progressing along that teaching career. At what point did your professional musician career take off?
So throughout that whole time, the school money, wasn't quite as much as I hoped it was, and I needed something to supplement that with. And so I would play jobs on the side, as a lot of musicians do. They go and they play at weddings or at a club or something at night, and you walk home at that time, with like $75 or $100, which was pretty cool. You go spend a night, you make $100. That's pretty cool. So I was doing that a couple times a week, and that was helping to supplement things. But also I had a lot of friendships that were made in college and even in high school before that. And all of these friendships were people that played music. And so they're always looking for a sax player, or they might be looking for a bass player. So the people are the people that you call. And so I just continually would work because of the friends that I had, and so that was nice, because it isn't just going out and working and playing music. You're going out and hanging out with your friends, and you're playing music, which is really cool. I've been doing that ever since. And at one point in time, I thought, man, I really would like to make an album.
Yeah.
One day I'd like to do that. And even in high school, I was recording in my basement and making these kind of fake records. I mean, I guess they were real records, but they were all produced by me. And I remember playing my saxophone into a tape deck, and then I'd record piano into a tape deck, and then I'd record the piano recording into another tape deck, because I didn't have a multi-track recorder, so I was just figuring out how to, shoestring the whole process together to make a record. And I thought that was really, really fun. So I'd make these little tapes and I'd hand them out to my friends and stuff like that, and they weren't very good. But I've always kind of had that in the back of my mind of something that I wanted to do. And then, teaching is such a demanding and time-consuming job. I just have never had time to do it. And so it was, over 20 years before I really said, you know what, if I'm ever going to do this, I need to do it now. Because, time's running out to really, make a good go of this. So that's what I did. And I have again, it's who is so important, and making friendships with people, and as they say, be a cool person, because the cooler person you are, the more people are going to be around you who like you, and you never know which of those people are going to have a connection here or a connection there. And one of my friends that I had a connection with a very famous bassist. His name's Jimmy Haslip. And Jimmy Haslip was the bass player and founding member of a really famous jazz group called the Yellow Jackets. And if you're into jazz, you probably know who they are. And if you're not, maybe you don't. But in terms of jazz, I mean, Jimmy Haslip is about as big a name as they get. Well, he was friends with Jimmy, and put me in touch with him. And I sent Jimmy just a little sample of me playing, and he said, yeah, I'd love to work with you. And from there, I got to use all of his connections, So he brought in probably the most famous contemporary jazz keyboardist named Jeff Lorber, Grammy-winning composer and keyboardist, and he brought him in to help me write some songs and to collaborate with, in the band as a pianist, and other people. I got to play on the record, like Sonny Emery from Earth, Wind & Fire. He's the drummer. This really famous trumpeter, Randy Brecker. So just basically by utilizing these connections that I got through my friend, I was able to not just make a record, which I could have just done. I could have just made a record by myself, and it probably would have been fine, and I would have fulfilled my goal. But because of this connection, I was able to make this record with really famous and outstanding people, which was just so much fun, because you have to sit there sometimes and just be like, is this really happening? Am I recording a record with Randy Brecker and Jimmy Haslip and and these guys? And yeah, and it was also great to have them, because they're so good at making records. Obviously, Grammy winning musicians, they're good at this. The final product ended up being probably 10 times better than what I had expected it would ever be.
That's awesome. Yeah, I tuned into Spotify last night. I listened to New Day, I believe it's called, and it was fantastic. It's really, really good. And you had the experience that you tuned into the radio, and all of a sudden you're hearing yourself play on the radio. That must have been pretty awesome.
Yeah, and in the genre I'm in, in the jazz and specifically contemporary jazz, there aren't as many radio stations as there used to be. Times are changing. Like you said, you logged into Spotify, and that's where most people are getting their music, is online streaming, YouTube or Apple Music or something like that. But around the country, there still are radio stations that people listen to in different places. There's one in Las Vegas, but I think we're down to about 15 or so radio stations that play contemporary jazz. And so I was able, to get actually I had 2 tracks now on the radio. And what you hope is that you get on XM, satellite radio. That's the one you want to get on. And I was lucky enough to get both of the 2 singles that I put out on XM radio. And I don't actually even subscribe to XM radio, but I bought my wife a new car, and they come with it.
Nice.
you get it for a month or whatever.
Speaking of your wife, and also an accomplished musician.
She is. She's
Lori.
a French horn player. She plays down in the orchestra at Temple Square.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
Yeah, I real musical family. All my kids play. I got 2 trumpet players and 2 saxophone players and a flutist. And all 5 of my kids were able to play on the record in the horn section too, which is
that's really neat.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. Where did you record the album?
So I think what most people think happens when you record a record is you rent a studio and everybody gets together and you go down there and you record all together, and that certainly is one way to do it, and people do that. However, this all happened during the pandemic and nobody was getting together, and so I never had the experience of getting everybody together all at one time, which in some ways was a blessing because I was able to get so many different, famous people on the record, where otherwise I would have only maybe been able to do a couple people, because you're getting all together. But what I do is we'd get the arrangement and the tracks all made, and then we'd send the samples out to the drummer, and the drummer would just play his drums on top of whatever you sent them, and now you've got Sonny Emery playing drums. Or we'd send it to the bass player, and the bass player would just replace what bass is on the sample track with their bass, and then it would come back to me, and I'd lay my saxophone on it at home by myself, and then you send it out to a mixing engineer that you can put it all together, and it's a really interesting and sometimes complex process to do it that way, but it was just great because I was able to use so many people that I wouldn't have been able to use. So
yeah, that's fantastic. So where can people get the record?
So, well, you can buy it. You can buy them on iTunes if you want to just get like single tracks, or you can buy them. I have a website too. This is what I do on the side now. I guess.
Yeah, that's.
I'm a jazz musician on the side, selling records. So, yeah, my website, randalclarkmusic.com. Also, you can stream it everywhere. And that's kind of cool. So you don't
that's
even
really
have
cool.
to buy it. In fact, people just buy, I think, records now and CDs. Just it's like souvenirs. They're not. Nobody knows what to even do with them anymore.
Yeah, they. I know you received an award earlier this year, the Salt Lake City Jazz Player of the Week or something to that effect.
Yeah, there's an organization, Salt Lake City Jazz, and they recognized me as the Salt Lake Jazz Artist of the Week, and that was fun. Had some music education awards in the past as well. I'm a Sorensen Legacy Award winner from 2014, and Utah Music Educators Association Outstanding High School Director. So there have been a few honors that have come my way. I'm humbled and honored by, and those have been fun. So.
That's fantastic, and your record's getting some really rave reviews as well. I've seen out there. That must be really gratifying.
Yeah, I hope so. There have been a few good reviews. It was submitted for a Grammy.
I saw that. That's really exciting.
Yeah, I mean those are super hard to come by. They've also condensed the categories now. So there used to be a category for contemporary jazz, and now they've basically wrapped everything. If it's instrumental, they've wrapped basically everything into one category for instrumental. So I'm going up against artists that aren't even jazz musicians now. So it's a lot harder to win a Grammy, and of course I don't expect that or even a nomination, but it was cool that someone thought high enough of the record to submit it.
So I used to cover the Utah Jazz for the Deseret News as a sports writer before getting this job at the district. And when I'd go to New Orleans, where the jazz originated, New Orleans Jazz, some of the fans would start chanting, "There ain't no jazz in Utah." They're really upset that the Jazz took the name to Utah with them, so they want to be the New Orleans Jazz. And there's no jazz in Utah, which was a pretty funny line. But what's the state of jazz? And we're not talking about Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, but the state of jazz in Utah.
We have a pretty strong jazz scene in Utah, actually. So. We don't have a lot of venues like where people go to hear jazz, but there are 2 or 3, and the musicians that are here are very strong. And as a matter of fact, I had a couple musicians locally that I used on the record just because they're so strong. But it's alive and well, and the jazz education world is extremely strong here in Utah too. With the thanks of like Brigham Young University and the U of U and some other colleges around, really waving the flag for that. But if you want to be a jazz musician, this is a great place to live and work, and a great place to learn jazz. So just about as good as anywhere, I would say, with the exception of we have fewer places that you can actually go listen to it on like a nightly basis. But yeah,
there's also quite a few. It seems like there's quite a few jazz bands in the high school arena. Is that growing, or is it kind of just some schools have it and some don't? Or?
It's holding steady. I think almost every high school probably has one. Most junior high, maybe not most, but I'd say probably half of our middle schools in the state have one. And a lot of great music educators in the state that are doing a great job, promoting that art form. It's a different thing. It's not pep band. It's not concert band. It's this own thing with its own distinct language and its own history that is fascinating to learn about and perform.
Are you a Utah Jazz fan?
Of course.
Right answer. Yeah. So what's the future look like for you? You're a busy man. You said you have 5 kids, and you're music director at high school, and got your own record.
Yeah, well, the primarily it's holding steady, with the music ed thing and teaching here at the high school, and hopefully making the students that I have under my care as good as they can be. It gives me a lot of pleasure to watch these kids get better and better, and some of them move on into college with scholarships, and then even beyond that professionally. I've had many who have. So that's been great. I am going to keep working. I'm starting a new record as we speak, but it simmers on the back seat. But now I have the right people around me because of those connections. It makes it a lot easier to do that stuff. Does make it hard to be a touring musician. I don't know if that's something I really want to do anyway. I did just play at the Catalina Island Jazz Festival though this last weekend, which was a lot of fun. So, occasionally traveling around and performing with some cool people is awesome. But, making another record and teaching band at the high school, that's where it's at. So
is it the Cannonballs? Is that the?
There's another group that I play with called the Cannonball Band.
Oh, the Cannonball Band.
So
okay.
There's the Cannonball Band, and that's been fun because they bring in some cool artists to perform with us. There's a company that makes saxophones called Cannonball, and they put together a little band, and I'm associated with Cannonball as well. It's another thing I do on the side. Is I work with Cannonball, helping them with their saxophones. And they get a band together, and they bring in some of the fancy artists that play the instrument, and we do some videos that go up on YouTube where you can hear them play, and I get to play with them and things like that. So that's been really fun. That's been more of a marketing thing for the company. But for me personally, it's playing jazz festivals and stuff around the country with my own group. Not the Cannonball Band, but my own Randal Clark Band.
Is that what it's called, the Randal Clark Band?
I haven't given it a name.
Oh, okay.
That's as good as any. So.
Yeah, it has a nice ring to it. So you're talking about teaching. Some NBA players or athletes or other people in their professions who are the top of their line, which you are. I mean, you're one of the best saxophone players in Utah and the nation. What is it difficult to teach players who aren't as good as you, and is it hard to be patient with them? And do you have to kind of put earplugs in sometimes?
I've never put earplugs in yet, but definitely there are sounds you hear sometimes that are tough to hear. But no, everybody's different. Not everybody is meant to be a basketball player, but it doesn't mean they shouldn't play basketball. And not everybody's meant to be a professional musician, but it doesn't mean they shouldn't have a music experience, And so the kids that, show potential for being that way are fun and exciting, and that's great. But primarily, I always just have to tell myself, my job isn't to make professional musicians. My job is to give everybody as high quality music experience as I can. And they're just going to bring to the table what their own talent and their hard work, what they bring with them. You know what I mean? So what they end up being is completely up to them. And of course, being the head of the program here, we want everything still to sound good. So, it's not like we just say, you're okay and that's all right. No, if you're going to be here, you're going to be great. No matter what, I'm gonna break my back making sure that you're great. But even those kids, you can make them sound great, but it doesn't mean that they're going to be able to exist at that top level, later on, and that's totally okay. So,
what is your pitch to high school students or middle school students about learning an instrument or playing in a band or an orchestra? Why is music important, do you think, to the youth?
So, music specifically, and I singing in a choir or singing or playing an instrument in a concert band or a jazz band, I think it's really important to be involved in something like that for a couple reasons. One is that, like I said, you make associations with people that you are not likely to make, like in your history class. You might know the person next to you or something like that, but in general, they're just passing people in your life. When you play in a band, even a big concert band, these are people that you hang out with more often than usual. You're hanging out in small groups. You're having socials. You're involved in a group project that culminates into hopefully something amazing, and that experience brings people together, right? So there's something that's really important, just from a social aspect. But also, playing music is hard. And it isn't. We don't tell people that, like, hey, everybody, welcome to band today. This is hard, but it is because if you take a math test and you miss out of 100 questions, you miss 10 questions. You still have an A, right? In band, if you got 100 notes and you miss 10 of them, and you're in a group where everybody else is missing 10 others at the same time, where individually everyone in the room might be getting an A, the overall product is terrible. You know what I mean? And so it's very difficult, number one, to play your own part at an A level, but then to have everybody else, like, you really can't afford to have mistakes if you want to have the overall product be an A. So in that regard, band is extremely difficult. Choir is difficult. Orchestras, it's difficult because the level at which you have to perform is so high. The stakes are so high. So with those two things together, the friendships you make, and then the demand to be excellent all the time, not unlike a sports team, that is extremely satisfying, and it's extremely, I think, helpful to teenagers. They're going to learn about hard work. They're going to learn how to be cool with people, and that kind of thing. So, and the side benefit is they learn some really cool music along the way.
I could go on. I have all sorts of questions, but we had limited time. But awesome, man. How many instruments do you actually play?
I play saxophone, flute, clarinet, a little violin, and piano. I can play the others, but you wouldn't want to hear it.
That's how I am with the cello now, unfortunately. Started trying the ukulele. That was kind of fun. So, all right, Randall, thank you so much, and we wish you the best, and appreciate your time.
Yeah.